Welcome to episode 12 of the CompTIA PenTest Plus training series, and we are moving along with module 3, which is on vulnerability analysis. And in this particular section, in this particular video, we're going to be going through the physical security overview. And this is actually a very important piece of penetration testing. There will be many cases where you will not just sit behind a computer and do remote scanning and try to attack into a network or a system using your computer. There will be very many things that you will most likely have to do to try to gain entry to a network via some kind of a physical attack, some kind of a physical attack vector. And we're going to be talking about a lot of those things in this particular video. And even if you aren't tasked to do the physical element of getting into a network or a building, it's really good to know about these things because you can coordinate with somebody who does do these things, or coordinate your specific skill set with potential physical security attack vectors or physical attack vectors that may exist, so that you can have a higher success rate when you actually do something like this. So it's very, very important, in my humble opinion, to actually be able to do this, and it just happens to be that it's a part of the CompTIA PenTest Plus outline curriculum anyways, so we kind of have to cover it. But I think you will be very satisfied by going through this. Pretty much every single spy movie that you will have seen has to do with some kind of a physical security vulnerability that existed, that the spy or the team of spies were able to exploit and gain entry to a building and to a network, etc. So physical security is a critical yet often overlooked aspect of pen testing. Even the most secure networks and applications can be compromised if an attacker gains physical access to critical infrastructure like the data center or the corporate office or industrial control systems, because literally sometimes all it takes is to just have a USB thumb drive that's inserted into a web server or some kind of a network device, and next thing you know, you're already in. So, they could have really strong digital or technical secure infrastructure or posture, and all you need is to just, plug in a USB, or literally get some human being who's very silly to plug in the USB for you. And then we'll talk about what that actually will entail. So in this particular video, we're going to be going through tailgating, badge cloning, and lock picking, and site surveys and security assessments, USB drops, and human-based exploits. And all of these things fall under the physical security umbrella. To get the PenTest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity and PenTest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this PenTest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the PenTest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, PenTest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us continue with PenTest Plus. Okay, the first one is tailgating and or piggybacking. Now, tailgating is the art of following someone, and then they enter into the building and they don't watch or wait for the door to close. So you kind of tailgate them, like you follow along with them. And then when they enter, you kind of rush to the door, and then you hold the door open and you let yourself in. Piggybacking is this idea that you ask them to hold the door open for you because let's say your hands are full, right? Like let's say you're holding a bunch of coffees in your hand, you can't open the door, you follow someone in and you're like, hey, can you please hold the door? And they look at you and they're like, oh, well, this person can't open the door because their hands are full. So out of politeness, right? Out of politeness, they'll hold the door for you. Or if they're distracted and they don't notice that you're tailgating them, they go in and then you just kind of let yourself in. So tailgating is one of the big things to exploit human error or human behavior. And it's the art of following someone. Now, whether you follow someone and you let yourself in or you follow someone and they hold the door open for you is kind of a moot point because it's essentially falling under the same umbrella. And example here is somebody in business attire follows an employee through a secured entrance by pretending to be a part of the meeting, and that could very well happen. I have actually been let into buildings that require a key card to enter because I was walking in and the person actually, so what is it? I was showing up for an interview and I knocked on the door. They came and they opened the door and they didn't ask for my ID. They didn't ask for anything and they just let me in. And this was a door that was required. It requires a key card for you to be let in. That was one instance. Another distance was literally I was doing the thing where it was like, hey, could you hold the door for me? And they just held the door open for me. They used their key card. They opened the door and they held the door open for me. Zero awareness, zero concept of security. They didn't ask me who I was. None of those things. They just held the door open for me because I was in business attire. I wasn't some schmuck showing up in a t-shirt and shorts. I was wearing a nice suit. I had my little portfolio in my hand. So I looked like a business person, but how hard is it to get a portfolio in your hand and to wear a suit? It's so crazy how some of these things can actually take place. And then once you're in the building, you're in the freaking building. So it's like at that point, hey, can you point me to the bathroom? And then they point you to the bathroom and then you walk away by yourself. And now you're kind of free to roam around the premises. And it's just so easy to get into the building. And for somebody who may be a stakeholder, for somebody who's a manager or something like this is something that you need to worry about. This is probably one of the biggest attack vectors that hackers will try to exploit because they just know that human beings are very uncomfortable with being rude or with saying, hey, you know what, I don't know you, I can't let you in, you need to go through security. For whatever reason, that's something that's very, very hard for somebody to do unless you actually have a security background or unless something has happened to you where you've been disciplined for letting somebody in and now they're super paranoid and they just won't let anybody else in because if they do, they'll lose their job. Like there are very few human beings that feel comfortable with saying, no, you can't come in. Obviously, security guards are like that as well, but it's like a normal employee at the building. They have a hard time saying no. They have a hard time saying, I'm sorry, I don't know you, I can't let you in. And that's kind of what we're trying to exploit with this specific strategy. How attackers perform tailgating, and I may have been confusing piggybacking with tailgating. I do have a minor case of dyslexia, but the description that we have here is that tailgating is when somebody holds the door open for you, right? They'll do it out of politeness. So you're carrying coffee, as I said, or you're carrying a box that seems to be like a heavy box or something like that. It could be an empty box. It could be a box filled with literally nothing, but hey, can you open the door for me? Can you hold the door open for me? Pretending to be an IT worker. I'm so sorry, I forgot my badge, but I need to fix the printer. That's a great thing. I would say you do need to have some kind of a uniform that can help you sell it a little bit. You can't just show up in normal clothes and say that you're an IT worker. Something needs to be on you that makes you look like an IT person, and then say, I forgot my badge, and then you need to fix the printer, something like that. Pretending to be an IT worker is also really clutch because if you actually do end up going into a server room or going into the room where the devices are, nobody's going to look at you twice. If you're somebody who looks like a business person and you're trying to go into the server room, that may raise red flags. So pretending to be an IT worker is kind of the best disguise, obviously, because we're trying to get into really sensitive rooms that have sensitive devices. And joining in a large group is another one of these things that's actually really clutch as well. It's like a really cool strategy. If you find a large group of people and you just kind of tailgate them and then you go in with them, but very rarely is it that if it's just somebody standing at security or if there is no security and there's no key card entry or anything like that, they'll just kind of let you walk in with them, like they don't even care, right? You can strike up a conversation with someone. This requires some kind of a social skill set, so that's another thing. It's like you can't be an awkward person, because most likely that'll raise red flags. So if you're a social butterfly, this is actually a great vector for you. This is a great position for you to be on the physical security team, on the physical pen testing team, because you can just use your personality and your charm to get yourself into buildings. Defense against tailgating would be something like a man trap. So if you've actually never seen a man trap, it's basically an entryway that's locked that requires authentication to enter. But there are certain types of man traps that actually exist in banking that are really, really useful as well, because it literally traps a person if they're trying to escape the building. So let me show you what that looks like in case you've never seen one. So this is one concept of a man trap. This is basically kind of like a digital overview of it. There are multiple rooms or multiple doors that can be used to enter this room, right? And so if you are in this room and you're a malicious actor, all of the doors lock, and now you can't leave the room, therefore you are trapped. So this is a security mechanism in multiple ways, not just kind of authenticating a person getting into the building. It's also a way to keep somebody in the building if they've done something that they should not have, and you want to hold them for the authorities to get there. A version of this are these doors right here. You will most likely have gone through a lot of these things because they exist at hotels and a lot of different places, and it's these kind of like revolving doors that, again, if you're not supposed to be the person, you get locked inside of these things. And another version of it is this thing right here. This is stuff that you will most likely see at a bank, which is these kind of glass boxes where you have the doors on this side where you're already on the inside, and you have the doors on the outside. And when you get into the building, or when you get into this box, you have to wait for the door behind you to close in order for this door to open. So that's another security feature. You can't have both of the doors open at the same time. And then what happens is that when this door closes and you're trying to open this other one, that's the opportunity for the security team to just lock this thing down. So again, man traps, very, very powerful. They're really powerful to let somebody in, but they're also powerful to keep somebody in case they've actually done something. This is a man trap, like a freaking trap that will trap your feet. That's not what we're talking about. This is a very, very fancy looking revolving man trap. So there's a lot of different versions of this, and the purpose is pretty much the same across the board. Requiring badge swipes for every entry is very important. This is one of the reasons why those revolving man traps are so nice, because even if they come in a very large group, you can only have one person enter that revolving door at a time. So it kind of forces people to just come in one at a time. And then conducting security awareness training, this is kind of like the biggest one, where you just teach the average employee who's not a part of IT, who's not a part of security, to be aware of these things and don't let anybody in, right? Like, ask them that they can't come in, even if they're holding a box, even if they're holding coffee in their hand. Don't let them in. If you don't recognize them, if they don't have a badge on them or any of those things, just, exercise caution. We would rather inconvenience people and have them put their box down and authenticate themselves than let them in the building, and now they hack our systems and they put us at risk, and a variety of different things that can happen when somebody enters the building. Physical harm can be caused to people. People can be held hostage. There are so many things other than IT security that can happen when you let a perpetrator inside of a building that should not have access to the building. So exercise caution as much as you can, and that's on the defensive security side. On the offensive security side, this is what you're trying to manipulate. You're trying to take somebody's lack of awareness and exploit that, right? You're trying to take advantage of their lack of awareness. All right, so here's the fun part, right? So here's the part where it's like, okay, well, now you have to clone a badge, right? You need to gain access to the building through some kind of tech. And this is where it gets really freaking cool, and it turns into a spy movie. So badge cloning can be done in a variety of different ways using a variety of different tools. There's also the radio frequency identification concept, or the near field communication concept. So these are essentially the technologies that allow for these badges to work, right? So if somebody has any of these things on them, they can either, the badge could be detected when they're close enough to a detector, like a scanner. So they will, bring their badge close to a scanner, the scan will detect it, and then from that it'll unlock the door, they can enter. There are some other ones as well that's very similar to a Tesla kind of a security, where it's like if you have your phone on you, and as long as your phone has been connected to the car, you don't need to hold the phone to your car for the door to open. As long as it detects you and you're close enough to the car, it'll unlock the car. The key card to access a Tesla is another one of those things that one you actually do have to put it on the door, the side panel of the door, and then it'll detect it and you'll enter. But for the most part, if your Bluetooth is turned on, it'll actually detect you. If you're close enough proximity to the car, it'll detect your phone and it'll allow you to enter into the car. So these are the technologies that allow for these things to actually take place. So access control can be manipulated this way, where if you have a badge that is needed to enter the building, somebody can potentially clone that badge, and the same scanner that will scan your badge to let you into the building, the same type of technology is used to clone your badge, because you then hold up your badge to the scanner. So for example, Proxmark, right? So you would hold your badge or hold your key card close to Flipper Zero or Proxmark. It'll scan it, it'll detect the authentication code that's inside of it, the security certificate that's inside of it, the token, whatever you want to call it. It'll detect that, and then it'll store it, and then you put another badge next to it that hasn't been attached to any kind of an identity, and then it'll print that, copy that initial key onto the new key. That's how you copy these types of badges or clone these badges. Proxmark is, I believe it's a stationary, so it like kind of plugs into a computer and stays there. Flipper Zero is a portable hacking tool that can be used to clone access cards, and you will most likely have seen this inside of some kind of a movie about spies and things like this, espionage. This would be an opportunity to point out that you should not be doing this, right? You should not be getting these tools and doing this maliciously. It is a felony. Just wanted to friendly remind you, this is the conversations that we're having right now are very, very sensitive conversations. You should not be doing any of this stuff without proper authorization, because it is a felony. You can go to jail for a very long time. Just keep that in mind. This is an example flow using Proxmark. So this is a command line tool. It typically does involve a scanner as well. So you would do LF HID read, so LF HID read, and then it'll read the badge, and it'll read the data of the badge, and then you would do LF HID clone, and then give it the ID of the badge to write to. And so the write option is provided here, and that's the ID of the badge that you're trying to write to. And then it'll clone it. It'll save the data from the first card, the first badge. It'll clone it on the next one, and then you can just use the next one. Then you can use the clone badge to actually enter the restricted area. The defenses against this would be to upgrade to smart cards with encryption and challenge response authentication, which is very, very important. So it's like multi-factor authentication used to enter a building. Smart cards typically are a little bit better than badges. Badges are also known as key fobs. I guess technically key fobs are also known as smart cards because it's the same type of scanning that's done. Reading an employee badge is, again, digital technology that you're reading, that you're copying and cloning into a new one. But when somebody tries to duplicate or clone a smart card, there's encryption on the smart card, and there's a challenge response authentication when you try to do it that will prevent the person, if they don't know the response to the challenge, they can't duplicate the card. So this is very, very important series of multi-factor authentication mechanisms that is being used to heighten security on smart cards and prevent smart cards from being cloned. Biometric authentication along with RFID badges is a really, really good series of multi-factor authentication. So biometric authentication could be your retina scan on your eyes. It could be your fingerprint scan or your hand palm scan for your hands along with your actual badge. And it's very, very difficult to technically, I guess they can take your fingerprint off of your shot glass when you're at a bar and then duplicate it that way, like the spy movies. But it's kind of difficult to do that. Definitely very difficult to get a retina scan, a duplicate retina scan from a person. So those things can technically be done, but it requires a lot of technology and it requires a lot of manipulation and maneuvering and all of these things that need to be done in order to be able to pull off biometric cloning. Implementing RFID shielding to prevent badge skimming, which is just a way for somebody, if they're trying to skim, right, like quickly move the badge, you would put some kind of shielding to take place so that it doesn't allow them to enter if they don't properly scan themselves in or authenticate themselves using their badge. Lockpicking is a skill that I have yet to attain. I'm actually very interested in learning how to pick locks. There are even kits on Amazon online that you can order that will obviously send your lockpicks to you, and they'll send you a practice lock that you can use to try to break into it. So lockpicking is one of those skill sets it just seems to be really cool, and this is why we're moving more towards digital cards and things like that, because you can technically learn how to pick a lock. Physical bypasses, it just falls under lockpicking. So in pen testing, attackers can bypass traditional security measures if physical locks are weak, and server rooms, network closets, and safes are common targets in these environments because either the door to the room is using a traditional lock, or the case in which the web server is enclosed, it's like a physical case. That specific case has a lock on it that is a traditional lock. So it doesn't have a keypad that you would enter a code or something that you would scan a key card against. It has like an actual lock that uses a key to open. So these are the environments where lock picking actually ends up being very, very handy if you don't know how to do it and if you don't have a duplicate key. So common lockpicking techniques are the single pin picking, using picks to move each pin individually, which is basically, I'm not going to kind of bore you with this, or I don't think it's boring, but I'm not going to go through trying to explain this because I really don't even know how to do it. I just know that the concept is you use a single pick, or let's say two picks. One of the picks will move each pin individually, and then the other one is used to turn the lock. So that's kind of what single pick picking is. Raking is something that you will use tension and a rake pick for, and you're kind of breaking the lock at that point. You're not really picking the lock. And bypassing would be, bumping keys or shimming that uses special tools to open locks without actually picking pins. And you may have even seen somebody using like a drill, like a mini drill, and they put the drill inside of the lock and then they turn it on, and then eventually it opens the lock. These are technically all lock-picking techniques. The one I would say that leaves the least evidence behind is when you use picks to actually pick the lock and you get into it and there's no damage that's done to the lock. So once you're in and out, unless you leave some other kind of evidence behind, they won't know that you've broken in. And that's like the best way to evade detection or evade investigation and things like that. So single pin picking would be the technique of choice in my mind, right? I'm not a lock picker. This is something that I'm assuming kind of by processing logic and trying to see, using critical thinking, what would be the best technique. But technically, these are all techniques that you can use, and you can Google them and you can learn more about them. Most likely, you will not end up using them. But if you do end up going into physical pen testing, then this is something that would be really, really handy for you to learn how to do. And it is something that you should be aware of if you see it on the examination. If you see bypassing used in the context of physical security or raking used in that context, you can pretty much rest assured that they're talking about picking locks. Common tools that can be used for lock picking are the Bogota, I would say, picks and hook picks, which are standard for pin tumbler locks. So it's the set of picks, right? You have the hook pick as well as the Bogota pick that is used to open a lock manually. Bump keys are used for opening basic locks by jolting the pins into place, and then shims are used to open padlocks and handcuffs. So these are the common tools that you can use for lockpicking. To defend against these types of attacks or these types of entries, you want to at least use high security locks. So the Medeco I would say Medeco is how you pronounce it, Abloy or Multi-Lock. These are brands that have high security lock systems that resist picking at the very least, right? You could technically still, I guess, break the lock physically through brute force and things like that, but at least they resist picking. If you can, you want to move away as much as you can from these physical locks and move into key card based access or key fob access instead of mechanical locks. And of course, rekey your locks when employees leave the company. This is kind of the biggest thing right here that ends up becoming a pain in the ass if you're using mechanical locks, if you're using physical locks. Rekeying locks or rekeying the codes for key cards and key fobs is much easier when an employee leaves, because you literally are doing everything digitally from a computer, and all of the key card IDs can have their actual keys changed if you just have a list of key card IDs. So it's very easy to change or to rekey, right, when you're using key cards or key fobs compared to mechanical locks, because you literally will have to switch out all of the locks and then give new keys to everybody that works there. And it's definitely much more of a nuisance and a time-consuming, energy-consuming process for getting rekeyed and making the adjustments when somebody leaves the company. All right, before you do your actual physical entrance tactics, you need to do a survey. This is also known as reconnaissance, right? You would do a site survey, which is another form of reconnaissance, but now you're doing it against the building, right? So it's the on-site inspection of the target location to identify security weaknesses. This is conducted before you do any kind of physical intrusion test, and it's reconnaissance, and it identifies entry points, surveillance gaps, security weaknesses, etc. Ocean's 11 is a really great movie for many reasons, but this is actually a really great movie to kind of go to take you through the process of this site survey reconnaissance mechanism that they do, because for a very, very good amount of time, they spend time looking at the employee behavior. They spend time looking at Terry Benedict's behavior, and they look at physical barriers, the type of cameras that they have in place. How many cameras do they have in place? What do the guards do? What are the rotations of the guards? Are there for them? Their wireless network presence was when Livingston, the little nerdy guy, they tracked one of the people from IT who went to a strip club, and they hired the stripper to get the key card off of his person, and then the stripper gave the key card to Brad Pitt's character, was it Rusty? And then Rusty handed the key card to Livingston. Livingston used the key card along with the uniform of an IT person. He used the key card to enter the security area, the restricted area. Oh, and before he could do that, they had to distract the guy that's standing at the security door. So they had two other people that kind of caused the ruckus, and then the security guy walked away from the door. Livingston used the key card to actually enter the door, and then he went into the server room and plugged this little thing into the servers themselves, and then they got camera access. And so that was their way of getting wireless network presence and access to the security cameras, so that they can monitor everything through the security cameras and then ultimately replace the feed of the security cameras. It's a very, very cool movie. I honestly genuinely love that movie so much. It's very entertaining, but there's also a lot of really cool tech stuff and nerdy stuff that if you're in security, you'll be like, oh wow, this is how they broke into like this giant casino, etc., etc. So these are the aspects of a site survey that you want to get a hold of, right? So you do reconnaissance over a span of days, because you can't really get employee behavior in one day. You kind of watch the building over a span of a week, and then you see, okay, how many employees are in and out, which are the more lackadaisical employees, which are the ones that are sharper. Okay, we want to avoid all the sharper employees. We want to kind of take advantage of this laxed employee. And then these are all the doors that we have to worry about. These are the types of doors that exist. Are there fences? Oh, these types of fences we could actually just cut into using a bolt cutter. Are there doors that they leave open? Do they just leave the doors open? Do they hold the doors open just because they're really nice? Whatever it is, right? So these are all of the things that you would do as a part of your site survey or assessment, right? And it all literally falls under the concept of reconnaissance. You're just doing it against all of the physical security measures, which is the cameras, the physical barriers, the employees, and everything along those lines. This is how you would do the assessment. These are just the general steps in doing the assessment. Gather open source intelligence, so OSINT, before visiting the site, right? If you can, Can you find blueprints? Can you find pictures off of Google Maps? Whatever you can do to gain some kind of an idea of what the building looks like and what the site looks like. And then you identify the entrances, the exits, and potential hiding spots, right? Then you observe the security guards' shift changes. You observe the security guards' behavior while they are on their shift. How do they treat people? Are they constantly looking at their phone or looking into a magazine? Or what are their blind spots, right? Which directions do they typically face? And which areas can you actually enter from that the security guard isn't paying attention to? And then check for unlocked doors, weak locks, or unguarded equipment. And this is more when you're actually on the building and you're not watching from afar, right? A lot of these stuff you could actually do from afar using binoculars or using the internet and things like that. But when you're actually checking for unlocked doors, now you're at the building. When you're looking at weak locks, you're at the building. Or unguarded equipment, you are in the building. So these are things that are typically done when you are physically close or on site. Now here's an example of an actual test that was done. And this is actual hacks that have been done in the past as well that follow along the same vector, because this takes full advantage of the human error element and the human curiosity element when you're just manipulating the hell out of the human being. So a security firm dropped a USB stick, or multiple actually, so they call this kind of like, I think it's called spraying, when you just drop USB sticks all over the parking lot. And the USB sticks were all labeled confidential payroll data. Who would not want to open that? Seriously. There are versions of this where you put pictures or something like this, or something that would be enticing to men, I guess, which is kind of, I don't know, just think about what men would find interesting, right, about women, and figure out what that label would be. But confidential payroll data kind of applies to everybody. Like, you can get men, women, doesn't really matter. Everybody is curious about, confidential payroll data, really? That's interesting. And so you would put that on there. Or payroll just by itself, if you just put payroll on the USB stick, that's enticing enough for a lot of people as well. And they've used this type of email subject line as well, where like you send a phishing email out to somebody and you title it confidential payroll data, and then you have a Google spreadsheet attached to the email that is supposedly holding all of the payroll data, and in the macros of that spreadsheet exist malware that as soon as they open it, the malware runs, and next thing you know, you are in their system and you have encrypted their files, etc. So confidential payroll data has been used in a variety of different campaigns, and it's very, very, very handy. So they dropped all these things inside of the parking lot, right? And then several employees plugged the USB sticks into company computers, leading to compromise. So several employees were curious enough to open this freaking thing and plug it into their computer, and then obviously open the file, and the rest of it is history. So to defend against this, you want to test your employee security awareness with simulated tailgating and social engineering attacks. This is not just against this specific tactic, it's in general against physical security attacks. Implementing restricted Wi-Fi zones is very, very important. This is something that is, it needs to be done at the very minimum. If you have a physical building, your Wi-Fi routers, your Wi-Fi room, where your physical network devices are, all of these things need to be restricted behind locks, and maybe even having security watching these environments, because you don't want a rogue access point to be launched inside of your building. And a lot of times a rogue access point needs some kind of an Ethernet port, an Ethernet wall jack. So there should be no Ethernet wall jacks that are available that can be plugged into just publicly in a lobby or something like that. So these are very, very important elements of physical security. And then of course, lock down the unattended workstations, auto lock computers after, like, let's say a few minutes of inactivity. Train people to lock their computers when they walk away from their desk. Part of the audits that have been done previously when I was in banking, one of the big things that the auditor would watch for is whether or not you lock your computer when you walk away from your desk, or when you walk away from your station. And that's a really big ding. If you don't lock your computer and you walk away, it's a really, really big vulnerability. And so that becomes a big ding on the audit. in case you're curious on how to actually run a USB drop attack, this would be the way to do it. So again, warning, don't do this because it is a felony if you get caught. This is like not cool to get caught about, but this is literally how you do the attack. So USB drops, right? They're also known as baiting. You're baiting somebody to plug in the USB. So, you know, we already talked about this. So the attacker leaves a malicious USB device in a target location. Curious employees plug them into company computers, allowing malware execution. And tools used in these types of attacks are the rubber ducky, also known as Hack5, which emulates a keyboard to inject malicious payloads, okay? And then the USB rubber ducky payload example is this right here. So this is actually what is embedded or launched, right? Assuming that they plug it into a Windows computer. It basically runs a PowerShell command. So it'll open up a new window and it'll open up in hidden format. So basically the pop-up, like it comes up for literally a fraction of a second and it just goes away. And then you don't see that there's a window that's open. It's a hidden window that opens up. And then inside of it, there's a new object for a web client. So essentially it's an Internet Explorer object that's launched that downloads this specific payload, which is a PowerShell script, right? So it just goes to that specific location, to this website, and it downloads this script. And then once the script is downloaded, you can set it to auto run the script, right? So this is a very basic kind of explanation of this attack vector. There are a lot of different ways that you can also do this, but rubber ducky is very, very common. That's used in these types of environments and these types of attacks. And this is a very simple PowerShell script that you just run to download something from the internet once the USB has been plugged in, right? And so once the USB has been plugged in, it will run this little script in the background. And next thing you know, you have downloaded the actual payload itself, the actual script, and you are off to the races. Furthermore, you can use a tool like Bash Bunny to automate exfiltration of sensitive data. Bash Bunny, from the name, I believe this runs on Linux and Unix-based computers because instead of PowerShell, they run Bash. I think. I don't want you to quote me on that, so please verify that on Google. The defenses against USB drop attacks, one of the big ones are educating employees about social engineering. So please don't plug anything that you found in the parking lot into your work computer. Like, please don't do that. Or how about this? Don't plug anything into your own computer either that you just found on the street, because if you are an employee that's a high-level employee of a company, there is very likely a chance that somebody's going to target you at your home if they know where you live or where you kind of hang out at. And if you plug the USB into your personal computer, and then let's say your personal computer is also in your house with your work computer, and both of those devices are connected to your Wi-Fi, your personal computer gets hacked. They go from your personal computer through your Wi-Fi connection to your work computer, and now they're in the work computer and inside of the work network. So, you know, as a rule of thumb, don't plug in a USB thumb drive into your freaking computer. If you don't recognize it, don't be overly curious. Who cares, right? Just don't plug in these things. There's nothing inside of those things that's useful enough for you to plug it into your own computer. You can block unauthorized USB devices with endpoint detection and response systems, which is very, very useful, and you should be doing that. When you plug in something to the computer will be like, oh, I don't recognize this. You can't plug this in. Disable USB ports via group policy in Windows, which is another really powerful way that we can do this. Group policy objects inside of Windows are done through Active Directory, and you can create a group policy object that says you are not allowed to use USB ports. Your USB ports are disabled. You can't, even if you plug in something in there, it won't read it because your USB ports on your computer are disabled. So this is another one of those really cool things that you can do to make sure, you know, in case employees are careless, you can make sure that you on the technical side, on the digital security infrastructure side, you've increased your security posture and they can't even plug in a USB port, even if they tried. Which brings us to the weakest link in the security chain, which is the human being. So why would you attack a human being? Human beings are the weakest security link in any organization. Their well-crafted social engineering can bypass technical controls because you can have really great freaking technical controls and security posture is amazing technically. However, human beings can be stupid. They can be unaware, right? They're oblivious sometimes, especially if they're not in the IT department, especially if it's the new teller that was just hired at the bank and they're straight out of college and they know nothing about the real world. So it's just like the perfect attack vector is to go after the young new person that just graduated from college. They have not experienced anything. They're fully freaking oblivious, and now you can manipulate them and you can exploit them. So common human-based attacks are phishing emails, right? Tricking them into entering credentials through some kind of a link. Vishing, which is a voice version of phishing, so impersonating IT staff over the phone. And this has become more and more common and more powerful in the age of AI, because now you have AI voice emulators that can read or scan basically voice notes or voice samples, I should say, and about 20 minutes of voice samples, and they can duplicate exactly what a person sounds like, especially if they have a unique voice and you duplicate their voice. Now you can go ahead and call as if you were that person, and then you're pretty much in. Pretexting is creating some kind of a fake identity, so creating a scenario basically. So I'm from IT, I need your access to your system. That's a pretext. You sell them a story. I'm calling from your bank. We got some some suspicious activity on your card, and I just want to verify the suspicious activity. Things like that, right? And these are things that they won't actually do. Like your actual bank isn't going to call you and say, hey, we've detected fake activity. They'll just block your card. And then you have to call the bank IT and be like, what's going on? And then you go and you speak with the fraud department, and the fraud department will authenticate you, and so on and so forth. So they're, for more often than not, they're not going to call you and say this is who they are, and they're trying to verify these things. Can you give me your credit card PIN number? Like, these types of things don't exist. They may call you and be like, hey, we detected that you're trying to do a $50,000 charge on your card. Was this actually you at this location? And then you'll say, yeah, that was me, or no, that wasn't me. And that's basically the extent of it. Apart from that, they're not going to be like, hey, so what's your card number? What's your PIN number? What's your birthday? Like, they're not going to do that. That is very much a red flag. So if anybody calls you trying to ask for this kind of information, be like, you know what? I'm good, bro. Thank you so much. I'm going to call the company directly. And then you go through the phone number that is directly from the company's website or something like that. Or you walk into one of their locations and then you try to get the rest of your investigation done that way. The defensive measures against these types of attacks would be to conduct phishing simulations to train the employee. Don't let them know that something is happening. Just send the email and see how many people click on the email. And once they've clicked on the email, and I've fallen victim to this, by the way, once you click on the email, you land on a page where it's like, hey, you just failed a phishing exam. Implement multi-factor authentication to prevent credential theft. So even if somebody gets their username and password and they try to log in from a computer that's not their actual approved computer, then there will be a multi-factor authentication that pops up that they have to answer, or they have to, get a security code that was sent to the email address or on the Authenticator app on their phone. And then verify all security-related phone calls before providing information. So anything that has to do with your sensitive information, your credit card information, your personal identifiable data like your birthday or your PIN number or anything along those lines, anything that seems fishy, that seems suspicious, most likely is. So don't respond. Just say, okay, thank you so much. And then you go into the bank branch, or you call the fraud department directly, or you call the customer service line directly, the phone number that you got from the website, not the phone number that the person gave you over the phone, or not the phone number that was text to you, because texting scams, also known as smishing, all those things are very, very common these days. So you just go to the company website and you get the phone number from the company website and you call that number instead of going through whatever information the hacker actually tried to provide to you. Which brings us to our practice questions for this section. So the question format breakdown aligns with the PenTest Plus examination, meaning that there will be multiple choice questions that you'll face. There will be multiple response questions, meaning choose 2 or more answers. And there will be performance-based questions where they'll be like, okay, here's a scenario, or here's a mix and match, right? It'll give you a series of responses, and it'll say they'll match these up with a appropriate match. So these are the types of formats of the questions that you're going to see on the PenTest Plus examination. I will note that the questions that I'm about to review with you are not identical questions that you're going to find on the actual exam, because it's illegal for us to share that. Any CompTIA examination that you take, they make you sign an NDA, meaning a non-disclosure agreement that says you cannot share the content from this examination with the public. If you do, we're going to take you to court, right? So this is one of the things that I'm going to work through logic with you. I'm going to work through critical thinking with you. I'm going to share questions with you that will hopefully help you understand the content and the information better and prepare you for the questions that you're going to face. The Word document that I'm using right now for these notes for this lecture has a variety of different performance-based questions on it, as well as all the other questions that we're going to look at in the slideshow right now. However, the performance-based stuff, like the mix and match stuff, isn't going to be on the slideshow. I will give you a bunch of scenario stuff that is going on the slideshow, and you're going to see in the rest of this video, but we're not going to go through the mix and match stuff that would be available. You can get access to that by getting access to this document directly, and the way to do that would be to join Hackaholics Anonymous as an agent, guardian, or a master. So anything higher than an agent, basically an agent or above, gets access to all of the downloads for all of these courses, including Security Plus, Network Plus, Linux Plus, everything else that we do. We're going to go into CYSA Plus. You get access to all of that stuff. They also get access to the slideshow as well, so you can use that for your studies and for practicing those exams. But we're about to go through the slideshow right now because I want to, even for viewers who are using this channel for free, I want you to be able to get access to this. So you will find out how to access the Hackaholics Anonymous membership. You should have already seen a message at the beginning of this video as well on how to join Hackaholics Anonymous. And there's going to be a link in the description below that will tell you how to do that as well. All right, so now let's jump into the practice questions. Physical security concept questions. Here we go. Which of the following best describes the concept of tailgating in a physical security context? Using a cloned RFID badge to gain access to a secure room. No, that's cloning badges. Following an unauthorized person into a restricted area without proper authentication, that is it. Tampering with a badge reader to bypass authentication, reusing old key cards for unauthorized entry. So essentially, anytime you see the word following when it has to do with tailgating, that's pretty much the answer in this particular case. Everything else that we're talking about has to do with some kind of technical manipulation, right? Tampering with a badge, reusing old key cards, using a cloned RFID badge, all those things are technical manipulations. Following someone into a building is pretty much tailgating. Very good. Which of the following techniques are commonly used in physical access testing during a penetration test? And we want to choose two. So physical access testing during a pen test. Lockpicking office doors or server cabinets, yes. Cloning RFID-based access badges, yes. DNS poisoning. So DNS poisoning is not a physical access vector. This is a domain name service poisoning access vector. So to reroute internal domains, this is purely digital and technical. Sniffing wireless traffic with Wireshark is also digital and technical. So the only two that are physical would be A and B. What is the primary goal of conducting a physical site survey during a pen test? So site survey, recon, right? So primary goal is reconnaissance when you're doing a site survey to try to find weaknesses and things like that. So to gather Wi-Fi credentials from staff is social engineering. To scan internal networks for vulnerabilities is not a physical site survey, right? That's kind of like digital reconnaissance, digital enumeration is what you're doing. To identify weaknesses in physical access control, surveillance, and procedures, that's the answer. To exploit CVEs related to badge readers, that's also, it's not a part of the site survey, I would say. This kind of seems like a little bit more digital and technical versus physical. So my answer would be C. Okay. Which of the following may be evaluated during a site survey or physical security assessment? 3 answers. So surveillance camera, blind spots, yes. Unattended workstations, yeah, I would say that. Access control systems and badge readers, yes. Nmap scan results, no. Emergency exit door bypass opportunities, yes. I'm kind of unsure about this one. So I would say A, B, and E would be my 3. Oh, C. Okay, so C is also part of them. E was not highlighted, but I think this is a physical security element here as well. So it's a part of our answers. Maybe I just forgot to highlight it here, but actually, yeah, I would say that E is definitely one of the answers. So emergency exit door bypass opportunities is definitely a physical security during like a site survey that you would get. What is the purpose of a USB drop during a penetration test? To install firmware on employee systems, yes. To test whether employees plug in unknown devices that could, yes, for sure. To reset BIOS passwords on a workstation, I mean, maybe. It's something that would happen once the USB has been plugged in. To replace software on critical systems. So these are things that can be done once the USB has been plugged in, including installing firmware on employee systems. But the purpose of the USB drop is to test whether or not employees will actually plug it in, right? So that would be the answer. Which of the following outcomes are commonly tested with USB drop exercises? 2 answers. So employee awareness of physical social engineering risks, yes. Endpoint protection systems detecting auto run or payload execution, yeah, I would say that. Server load balancing under high traffic, no. DNS cache poisoning from LAN traffic, that's also no. So these two are not a part of physical penetration testing at all. So server load balancing under high traffic has to do more with system administration than security even. DNS cache poisoning is a security thing, but it's logical. And employee awareness and endpoint protection detecting auto run or payload execution, those would be, yeah, cool. All right, scenario. During an on-site test, you observe that employees often enter the building without scanning their badges because the doors are held open by coworkers. You walk in unnoticed and gain access to the break room and server hallway. That would be tailgating for sure. Brute force badge cloning, no. Lock bumping, no. This is literally somebody opening the door for you, right? So tailgating is the answer. You drop several USB devices labeled executive salary review. Who would not open that? In the company parking lot, one of them is later plugged into an employee's computer and the payload establishes a reverse shell. So which 2 concepts did this involve? So the USB drop, yes. Human-based social engineering, I'm going to say, yeah. Bluetooth man in the middle, not necessarily, because the payload establishes a reverse shell. I mean, technically that could kind of be it, but it's not a Bluetooth attack. It's like something that physically was plugged into the computer. And remote phishing is not a part of this because it's technically a physical phishing kind of a thing. If anything, it would be like physical. So USB drop is definitely for sure one. Human-based, I would say it's A and B. Very good. Okay, so a pen tester gains access to an unlocked server cabinet located in a poorly monitored hallway. Inside, they discover exposed Ethernet ports and unmanaged switches. Okay, what recommendation should be made to address this vulnerability? Switch to cloud-based DNS. That could be something because if they're based on the cloud, they don't have physical servers on site anymore. So that could be a recommendation. Physically lock and restrict access to the server. That's the most obvious answer. Update all SSL certificates has nothing to do with this. This is an encryption for your website and other types of communication that require encryption during the transfer of data. And increase email phishing training. That also has nothing to do with this because this is a physical vulnerability that's being exploited. So the answer would be B. Yes, great. Oh, okay, and that's pretty much it. So that's all we got for the practice questions for section 3.3, which was all on physical security. So we are going to move into the tools for vulnerability discovery, which will essentially just outline all of the tools that you would need when we get into the practical section of this training series. And when we start running all of these exercises to try to discover vulnerabilities and scan for vulnerabilities and things like that. So all of that stuff is going to be covered in the next video, which is the tools for vulnerability discovery. And to get access to this slideshow with all these practice questions, to get access to the notes document that I used for the lecture, please consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. You will see a message for that in a few seconds. And if you have any questions about this specific training, drop it in the comment section below. Make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, all of that good stuff. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers. I will see you in the next episode later. To get the PenTest Plus notes, practice questions, and to join a supportive community of like-minded people like you, consider joining the Hackaholics Anonymous membership community. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, the agent, the guardian, and the master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels will get exclusive content like line-by-line code explanations for how to create cybersecurity and PenTest Plus scripts, like exclusive downloads that they will get. For example, the notes document for this PenTest Plus and everything that I'm using for the lectures, as well as all of the practice questions and everything else that will go along that will be made for the scripts and everything else that we're going to be doing for the PenTest Plus training series. There will be free pre-made monthly Python automations that have to do with system administration, cybersecurity defense, as well as, of course, PenTest Plus and ethical hacking. And then there's going to be monthly live streams with me every single month, plus so many other things that you would get as a part of being a member of Hackaholics Anonymous in these tiers. To join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there. Or you can go to youtube.com/@hankhackshackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous.